Hey, everybody. Welcome to the New to Coaching group tonight. I'm Allison Peterson, and I am so glad that you are joining us tonight for a little discussion about using weekly meetings, how to set them up, and how to use them to keep your coaching cycles going. So tonight I have with me one of our members, Holly Bejarano, and she is going to be joining us tonight telling her story. She's a first-year coach. She's going to tell us a little bit about her transition to coaching and then her journey into the school year and how she has used coaching cycles as weekly meetings to get to coaching cycles. So I am really excited about this session tonight. So I really hope you'll jump in and join us. If you're here in the comments, say hi. Hey, Autumn, I see you. It's great to see you and have you on tonight. Okay, so we are talking again about this idea of using weekly meetings for coaching cycles. And we're really focusing in on Holly's story. She's going to share with us her experience, and it's going to be so great. So say hi in the comments. Let us know you are here. If you're catching this on #replay, then make sure you drop a #replay. Let us know you are here, and we will comment. You can comment back. I will be able to see those later. I would love to answer your questions, so feel free to throw those in. When you say hi, let us know what kind of coach you are, where you're coaching from, and at this point, maybe how many days you have in the school year left, because we did a live session a few weeks ago about what to do as a coach after spring break. So I'm sure that so many of you are dealing with testing season after spring break, and I know that it is a little bit tougher to get into coaching with all of those things going on. So let us know how that's going. A few announcements for you before we get started. The other day, the New to Coaching group hit 11,000 members. This is so exciting. I love to celebrate and welcome our new members into the group. So if you are a new member, drop a #new member, introduce yourself, let us know you are here. So excited. I personally reach out to every member who joins the group, and I have for the 4 years that I've had the group. So that means I have 11,000 new amazing friends. So if you for some reason have not DM'd with me, then you need to send me a Facebook DM. I would love to hear from you, hear how your year is going. I always ask, how is coaching going for you? Because I love hearing your story and what you're in the middle of. So always send me a message. Also, my new book is coming out. Kickstart Your Coaching Cycles will be out in just a few weeks. I'm so excited to finally get it in your hands. If you want to help me get it out into the world, this book that has been really crafted by this community, because we've been doing Kickstart Your Coaching Cycles Challenge here in the group, and that has now turned into a book. I would love for you to help me get it out into the world. So go to newtocoaching.info/book and sign up to be a part of my launch team. You will get early access to the book when you sign up for this right now. You can get chapters 1 through 5 in PDF, like sneak peek form. So you can go ahead and start reading it today. So if you want your hands on this book right away, go ahead and grab this, be a member of this launch team, and you can help me get this out into the world. And I'm so excited for that. And that is just going to be a few weeks away. It's coming so soon. I cannot wait. Exact date to be announced. So we are ready to enrolling with this, getting this book out into the world. So come and join me for that. So, okay, let me introduce you to Holly. She is going to come up on screen with me. She's going to introduce herself a little bit. Let's see who else is here. First, hey, Jessica, interviewing for my dream job tomorrow. Friends, we have this one video that has a ton of views on YouTube that Casey and I did last year that has helped people get their coaching jobs. So make sure you've watched that video, Jessica, if you haven't yet. In a second, I'll post it into the comments for anybody who hasn't seen it yet. It will actually land you the job. I've had so many people message me and say, I watched your video and I got the job. I'm not saying, but I'm just saying it should help you. So excited for you. 21 days left, Autumn says, and the book is amazing. Autumn's already read the first 5 chapters because she is on it. All right. So I'm going to introduce you to Holly and bring her on stage here with me. Hi, Holly. How are you?
Hi, everyone.
Awesome. Okay, so if you will take a minute and introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you and about your coaching journey. It's your first year out of the classroom as a coach. and you have a unique journey because you went from high school to elementary. Yeah. So you're going to tell us the
That
whole
is true. I've kind of been everywhere, I guess.
Yes.
So I've been teaching since 1996. I stopped counting the years a while ago, so I don't even try to guess that anymore. But I did start in elementary. And so I did most of my years till elementary. About 4 years ago, I moved to high school ELA and fell in love with it. I love it. I miss them every single day, seriously. But in the middle of the summer, we were at a summer training, and I had a principal reach out to me and ask me if I'd be interested in coaching. And the truth is, I've always been a little bit interested in it. So I was like, maybe I would. And then I met with him and decided to give it a try. So this is my first year out of the classroom.
Yes. Okay. That's awesome. So it's been a little bit of a transition though. So tell me a little bit about like how the beginning of the year went was you were transitioning in, introducing yourself to faculty and just trying to build those relationships. What was working for you as a new coach on this new journey?
So, to be honest, a lot of it wasn't working for me at the beginning. So, when I decided to take this position, it was because I was really excited about the challenge. We're in a school that's been struggling for quite a while. And they sold it to me as you could be in on making this a great place. And I fell for it. So I was like, I love that idea. Let's try it. And that has been the best part of it. But it also has been a challenge because these teachers have gone through a lot over the years. The students have gone through a lot over the years. The TLS before had some issues, and that left some of the people not wanting to open up to me right away. They didn't know for sure who I was because I'm in a whole different part of our district than where I was used to. So it took a while for me to get to a point where that they would actually come to me. So I made my nice little flyer that said, please reach out to me. And, so I'd have one person here and there that would do it. And they would ask me to come and coach or whatever, which helped because then once that was successful, they would tell somebody and so on and so on. But it was definitely a struggle at the beginning.
Yeah, and it always is. And so many new coaches really run into that right away. And that is something that is very common. And so I know you had told me that, so this whole conversation and inviting you to come on started with us messaging in one of the new to coaching like chat groups. And it was talking about, you mentioned having weekly meetings with teachers, and everyone's like, tell me more how you did that, but tell me more how you did that. But I know that you weren't able to start with that. So tell us a little bit about how that came about.
Okay.
And also, yeah, go ahead. No, you're good. Tell me a little bit about that.
So in our district, the expectation for our instructional coaches are that we meet weekly and do a weekly cycle basically with our year one teachers. So brand new, never been in the classroom before. Those teachers you're supposed to meet with weekly. And then our year 2 and 3 teachers you're supposed to meet with every other week. So basically do a coaching cycle every other week. But when I first came in, we're supposed to look and see there's a few different things that we're supposed to do. And the first one is how's classroom management in every classroom in the school. So you can't be doing that and having your weekly meetings right off the bat. So I wasn't able to get any of that started right away. So I would say in about October, I had it to where the objectives were being written the way that we needed them to be. So it was aligned to the standards. People were definitely starting to, get down all that kind of stuff. So I was able to now look at my schedule and start doing the weekly meetings. So I started with my year one teachers. And I just, I created an invite to them just to come and chat with me for a while. And that was where everything started changing for sure.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of, those year one teachers you usually build a pretty good relationship with right away.
Yep.
And so sometimes those can turn into what I call your runners, like your more willing teachers. They have a lot of questions. They're willing to come to you. You're their safe person because they're new to the school. And so trying to break in with them. But I know that you had kind of said like nobody was coming to you at first.
Yeah.
Right? So but this invite brought them in and they were willing to talk to you a little bit more.
Yeah.
And so how did you kind of break the conversation around like a weekly coaching conversation? Was that more like week to week you started inviting them, or did you tell them ahead of time we're going to do weekly meetings?
So during our, I guess, get to know you meeting, I would say, I got to know them personally. And then at the end of that, I said, well, part of our district mandate is that we meet once a week and we do a cycle. And then I let them choose between 4 categories that they would focus their goal on, and they set their first goal. And then I told them I'd be in at a certain time. I made sure it was scheduled so they knew when I'd be coming in to see it in action.
Yeah.
And then I take notes and I script, and then we do a feedback meeting. And we decide at the feedback meeting if we're going to stay with the same goal for a while, which usually it takes, a month or so before they move on, or if they're going to choose a new goal and move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, I talk a lot about this in my new book, Kickstart Your Coaching Cycles, just the whole process of that listening meeting where you are going in and talking to them about what their goals might be. I love that you gave them some options. Did you have like, what are those categories? Were those like specific or?
Yeah, they are. So one of the things that I was really lucky with this year is Solution Tree was coming in to see us throughout the year. And she gave me this, she calls it the playbook, but it's basically your 4 categories. I actually added those to the document.
Okay.
To the, what is it called? Padlet.
Yes, the Padlet. We need to get that link out to the group. So I will copy that and paste it into the comments. Make sure.
So basically the 4 categories are goals, engagement, safety and relationships, and like building those high questioning or the DOK levels, that kind of thing. So there's also an opening, like if they want to choose something that's not on there, we can. Like if they want to build it even higher, like with Socratic seminars or something like that, we can do that too.
Yeah. Okay. And so they took you up on that.
Yes.
And then the classroom visit piece. So did you always kind of treat that like an observation, or were sometimes you were partnering or co-teaching, or were you able to do a little more in there?
Yeah, both. So it depends on what their goal is. So sometimes they first went to go see another teacher, and I would go with them and we would look at what they were, trying to see, especially if it was for classroom management. I feel like that was a really strong thing to go see with some other teachers. Sometimes I modeled, sometimes we co-taught. I co-taught a lot actually with some of them. And then sometimes I just went to see them do it. So it was a variety. It depends on what the goal was and how the teacher felt.
Yeah. And I think you get into that natural cadence with a teacher once you've worked with her for maybe, once or twice in her room, once or twice, like you can kind of move over into this place of like natural co-teacher where you can bounce off of each other really easily and really step into that spot without it feeling like, awkward at first.
Yeah, and there are some teachers that love having you in there, of course, and you can kind of tell by the other month and a half to 2 months that I had been going in and out who was going to be, open to it and who wasn't. So one teacher in particular was super open to me just taking over whenever I needed to. And so we were able to really get a lot of that co-teaching done.
Yeah. That is so great. Okay. So, but in that whole process, you started pulling from some different sources and different trainings that you had, and you're really trying to shape up your coaching model, which is just picking and pulling. Like this is something that I think new coaches don't always understand, is like they might hand you a scripted model or they might tell you you're doing this or that, but so much of it is going in and just figuring it out, trial and error. So what did you discover?
That is so true, because when we have every other week we have a training at the district, so which is quite a bit of training outside of the school. That was definitely a negative for me because I felt like I should be here. But over time, you start picking things out of that you like and use. It's just like the classroom, when they give you a curriculum and they're saying use this resource with fidelity. There's some things that no matter how hard you try to use it, it's just not going to work for you. Or there's things that work really, really well for you. So that's kind of what I did. I started pulling from Solution Tree and from the district and from books that you've recommended through, this group.
Yeah.
And also just the group itself from Facebook gave me tons of ideas. So I started using that kind of stuff and just kind of merging it all together to make it all fit what I needed.
Yeah. Yeah. And I find that too, kind of like you were talking about before, like different teachers are ready for different things. So this one teacher might be ready for you to use this tactic or strategy, and the other teacher you might want to pull from this place. So just depending on who you're working with too, it can kind of be adapted there. Okay. So in my book, the Kickstart Your Coaching Cycles, we talk about that listening meeting where you guys decide what your goal is going to be. And you clearly identify that. This is like a side note, but do you have a way that you're tracking those things? Like that's always a question that coaches ask, like, how do you track your coaching cycle? So when you're writing down those goals, what are y'all doing?
So I have had that. Honestly, it seems so silly, but that has been my biggest challenge, is finding the best way to track for me, because the district uses a form that we have to use. So I do use that when I go in, but that doesn't really align with how I am necessarily doing it. So I use that form to then take it into my coaching log. And I did link a sample of my coaching log to the Padlet also. But then, and this is going to really seem crazy, this has been the best thing in my life. And so I looked for, well, it's not as good as my family, of course, but it's been the best thing in my coaching life. My daughter's taking a look right now. Right. So this was when my life turned around, I feel like. And honestly, I tried to look for all the different ones that already exist, and I just had to create my own. So I just started putting my daily goals in there, my beautiful to-do lists and my daily goals. And now I totally have it all together, and they stay in there from month to month, so I can see the growth from teachers from month to month also now. And I just hole punch the dip that we use from the district, and I slide it right in there. I know it seems crazy that that's what works, but that's what has worked for me the best.
Yeah. And I think there has to be a mix of digital and paper, because you have a lot of paper, and it's just more organic to take notes on paper.
Right.
And then you've got all this paper, and you're going to find somewhere to organize it. And you've got all these teachers, and you kind of have to organize all the things that are for each of them. So I could see a binder like that being really, really helpful.
Yeah, it was really helpful.
One of the things that I do with some of that is I use my Google Keep tool to like snap a picture of the paper, and then I tag it with the teacher's name. So I have all of my teachers in my Google Keep as a hashtag. The way that Google Keep works is just you tag it like a hashtag.
Yeah.
And then it will organize any of my paper notes over in their file. And and it's also really easy to add a note or to put something into that Google Keep file from my phone, on the go, or whenever I'm thinking about things. And if anything needs to turn in from a note to a Google Doc, it can transfer. So
that's cool
those of you who are Google schools and like the Google tools, I like Google Keep for sure.
Yeah, I just started playing with that the other day, but I haven't used it much, but I like that idea a lot.
Yeah, it takes a minute to kind of set it up, and then like remind yourself, like, use your phone to write that down or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think it's the snapping of the pictures that I like, because of the way that it will display them. And so you can kind of like show them on your phone screen or on your computer screen. You can kind of go look and be like, where's that one document I'm looking for? So
yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I do really like that. Okay, so we got the listening meeting. You identify the goal. You're writing it down in your notebook. You're keeping track of it as you go. Then you're going into the classroom, partnering, modeling, observing, doing something to track some data and to think about what's happening in that space. You're kind of like having this shared experience with the teacher, right? And then you take that shared experience into a debrief, or I like to call them reflection meetings, is what I've called them in my new book. So tell me how you've like led some of these teachers through some reflection conversations that have been fruitful.
So we have a planning sheet that we use beforehand to just kind of map it out. And basically I try to probe as much as possible. Like you said, I want them to reflect and come to this, the answers themselves if they can. There are other times though, where I do have to kind of lead it.
They're your teachers after all.
Yeah, exactly. So I keep a sentence stem, like question stem thing on my, binder.
Yeah.
Not my binder, my clipboard. That's what it is. On my clipboard. And so that way I can just kind of, it prompts me if I've forgotten any. But basically it's just like, what did you notice about, or how could that have been better? Things that just probe them to think. I can't think of them all right now, but I did link them to the Padlet.
Yes. Okay, great. So I posted that Padlet, and you should be able to find that in the link in the comments below, so that you can see that showing up for you. And you can see some of the other resources that Holly has posted, because we knew that she would mention a few here tonight. So we have those posted for you on the Padlet. So I can even pop those up if we want to take a look at any of them. So with those reflection meetings, when you have a new teacher who like kind of gets stuck and can't figure it out on her own, how are you helping to like guide her or provide her some strategies? What has worked for you when you have to kind of be a little more directive and you have to tell her, here, this is what we're going to do, but you don't want to like really like totally tell her? How has that worked for
Yeah.
you?
So basically what's worked the best for me is what's in the script. If it's written in black and white and it's like data, they seem to respond to it better. I know as a teacher, that's what I responded to the best also. So you can just like, let's say it's about engagement. Well, 6 out of 10 in this one group were not engaged when you were doing your whole group lesson.
Yeah.
So what could we do to make sure that those 6 are now engaged next time? Things like that. Just the black and white facts to me are the best way to approach it.
Yeah. And that is where the data comes in. And I think data can look really different depending on, like you said, depending on the goal and depending how you're supporting. The data you're collecting can look really different. But this is the moment where you kind of like, you're asking them some reflection questions, and then you're pausing and you're like, okay, well, let's see what this says. I noticed that 6 out of 10 were not engaged. Right. I noticed that. Or if that was the kind of data, or maybe it was more like their small group data, like they weren't answering these questions right, or maybe there was an exit ticket. So whatever the data component is that you're taking from that classroom conversation, then you can bring that into the reflection meeting and kind of use that to bring these things forward so that they can see them themselves. And I think it's important, because I think that's a part of what the coach is able to do, is she's that extra person in the room. So she has the space to take the data, whereas the teacher's teaching. She can't take the data at the same time. Yeah. So it doesn't feel, I feel like in that scenario, when you're working together and you're partnering and you're bringing that data and you're mentioning it, it doesn't feel punitive or like it's pointing out like the flaw. It's just like the facts. Like you said, like, this is what I saw. We were right together. Did you see it too? That kind of thing. So yeah, so I think the data is an important part of that reflection meeting that kind of gets us there. So then as we come around the circle, we're talking about how you are actually like seeing this progress happen, how you're seeing change happen with these teachers. So tell us about how you did that. And then we'll talk a little bit, now that we've kind of gone through a whole cycle, like how that happens in the weekly, like week to week. So what have you noticed about measuring change and seeing that happening through cycles?
So I don't want to keep saying data, but data. So one of the ways that I've noticed is we track all of our unit test scores from the district. And at the beginning of the year, we were always at the bottom. Every time our school was at the bottom. Mm-hmm. And now we're middle. With the teachers that I'm working with, I track and they're in the middle. Some are even higher. Yeah. So to me, that's showing a lot of growth, but also just going into the classrooms and looking at our DIP again, which is our tracking system. Yeah. The check marks are there now, so they have this aligned, they've done this. So I can see it in a lot of different ways, but also we do a survey where they can tell us feedback, and it was all positive. So I know that I'm, starting to reach some of them. It's starting to make a difference. Probably not for everybody that I needed to yet, but we'll get there. I'll keep working on it next year.
Well, that's an impressive year one, because getting into classrooms and really being able to work with teachers closely, and a lot of them, that's huge, because some coaches don't even get there. I was talking to a few, asking how their year was going, and they were like, well, I just wish I didn't have all these other hats that I had to wear, because I can't get to the one-on-one coaching. So the fact that you've gotten to some of it and seen progress that shows up in data, like that is absolutely huge, because it is, if anybody out there is thinking I'm failing terribly because I haven't, you aren't, because this is a rare find first year being able to make that kind of impact.
Oh, thank you for saying that, because I always wonder, you're never sure, because it's not like in a classroom where your students are telling you all the time, or, that everything's working. So it's harder to gauge. So I never know for sure, but that's good to hear.
Yeah. Okay, so let's like back up a little bit and think about weekly meetings. How did you manage all of these weekly meetings? And then how did you feel like that rhythm kind of worked for you and the teacher? Because a weekly meeting is a really great way to kind of keep coaching cycles very active without making it feel like, oh, we got to commit to like 12 weeks. We're just going to work at the weekly. So how did you manage so many weekly meetings?
Well, it's all about scheduling. So honestly, you don't have a lot of downtime, especially at first. So I just mapped it out in my day, and there were like, I kept a few spaces open for paperwork type of things, but other than that, I was in classrooms or meetings all the time. And then as time went by, they got so much better at all of it. So there were times where I could do the feedback through email, or I could just leave a sticky note on their desk and we didn't have to do a feedback meeting. So some of that got to be a little less as time went by. But at first, it was just busy.
Yeah. Really busy. Because you're planning the actual meeting with the teacher, and you're planning some kind of classroom visit. Mm-hmm. Yeah. In the same week. So it's really
and a feedback meeting. But my feedback meetings usually last like 15 to 20 minutes too.
Okay. So you aren't using the next weekly meeting for the feedback. You're trying to actually stick that in the week too. Yep. That's a lot. That's a lot.
It is, but I was able to do it. Okay. And that's just for my first years. My second and third was every other week. So I broke those in half. 1 week I'd add them and the other week I wouldn't. And that doesn't even include all the other teachers, but you still have to get in to see when, they need you and stuff. So there are some people that I definitely didn't get in to see very much, because during the first 2 months, I could tell they did not need me. They could probably do my job better than I am. Some of them are amazing. So I was like, they're off my list, but I still go in when I can because I feel good in there.
Yes, I love that's the runner. That's the runner. If you just need a little fuel in your tank, go visit your runner teacher. She'll come up with some crazy idea and you'll get to help her with it. Okay, so when I think about the weekly meeting, sometimes my cycle, when I used to execute it as a coach, I mean, I do it now, but when I was always really consistent with the weekly meetings, I was doing like the first meeting with the teacher, like early in the week, like Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah.
And then later in the week, I'm doing the visit. So let's say Thursday. Mm-hmm. Then on Tuesday, when our meeting would come back up, we would debrief then, so that I wasn't trying to add in the debrief too. Yeah. It kind of naturally leads to, when you come back on Tuesday, you're reflecting, but you're also planning for that week. And so it just creates this conversation of like, all right, so what do you want to change from last week? Okay, here's what I'm going to change. All right, I'll come back on Thursday and we'll keep going. So I do like that model when you're trying to get weekly meetings going, and if it's feeling
that extra time. Yeah. There were times where we would meet to jumble it together because we'd have to too.
Yeah. And I mean,
but you know what I mean.
I know, but the teachers mine only have 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's not a lot of time to get everything in, So.
And I let them choose they could do before school, after school, or their prep, because some people are better. And so honestly, we don't start school till 9. So I was able to get a lot of meetings in the morning. So that made a big difference.
Oh, that's a really nice schedule added. Yeah. So what time do you have to arrive?
8:40.
Okay. So, but they would come in even earlier.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Almost everybody's here by 8.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's a great window. So when you're kind of looking for windows like that in your schedule where you could, offer that. I know sometimes it is harder after school if they have to leave for their kids, or if they're coaches, or all these different things that they can be. I mean, like sports coaches.
Right.
Yes. Okay. So that weekly meeting rhythm, that's something that I really talk a lot about in my book, Kickstart Your Coaching Cycles, because that's kind of the model that I feel like is a little more approachable for a coach who,
Mhm.
rather than feeling like they have to schedule out like 12 weeks of meetings and all of this. So I think it
Yeah.
just flows a little bit more naturally for you and the teacher. I also think that when I'm first getting started with a teacher, so I don't have this rule where all first years have to work with
Right.
me like you do. So, but when I'm first getting started with a teacher, we start maybe like with one cycle, and then I ask just that simple question, like, well, do you want to meet again next week? Do you want to meet again next week, and we'll keep working on this goal? And that's what helps it feels like a natural, let's keep going,
Uh-huh.
so that it's not this feeling of like, well, I'm going to have you sign on the dotted line that you have to commit to
Yeah.
6 to 12 weeks of all of this. And that really helps to kind of create the natural feeling of what, just I really want it to feel like to them, like they want me to come back, right?
Yeah. Right.
Like, let's
Right.
not overwhelm, right? So good. Okay, so this idea of weekly meetings, you said you're going to continue with it next year, you
Yep.
think? You like
Yes,
it moving forward?
definitely.
What have you really learned from this first year as a coach that is a big takeaway for you?
To keep it positive as much as possible. Because there were times where I would feel overwhelmed and I could see the stress on my face, like during testing.
Yeah.
Um, I had no idea what that was going to be like coming from the classroom because you only had your class to worry about, and now you have
Yeah.
the whole school to worry about. So that has been eye opening for me. I've been exhausted for the last 3 weeks because we kind of spread out through all of April for it. So it's a lot.
Yes.
So I would say that I learned that staying positive is way more important than it ever was before because not only do you have to lift yourself up, but you have to lift everybody else up also.
Yeah,
I
you're
would
that
say that's
person.
probably my biggest thing that I learned, and that I can't do everything, and that's okay.
I love that. You're going to have to talk more about that because that is something that new coaches really need to hear when they come into the new role. There's this element of like, I want to do really well and
Yep.
I don't really know what this job is, so I'll just do whatever you ask me to do. And I'll do it really well. But
Uh-huh.
next thing you know, I'm making the newsletter, I'm planning all of the testing coordination, I'm doing everything except coaching.
Yep.
So how did you put some boundaries around some of that? I think that that's encouraging.
Honestly, my principal's amazing. His goal is to get me in the classroom. So he
Yeah.
really has been really good about that. But also, I mean, I still tried to do everything because
Yes.
we're like, as instructional coaches, we are those teachers, right? That we're like that in the classroom too, because that's why they want us to be instructional coaches.
Yeah.
So I think that that's just our natural way that we have to remember not to take it all on. But what I started doing is prioritizing. So I would look at it, and those meetings were priority number one. The
Yeah.
only time they weren't was during testing.
Yeah.
And then I did have to take some of those off. And I have been not meeting for the last 2 weeks. So it's been killing me not to get into the classrooms and stuff. But it's just the way it's going to have to be for another week. And then I'll get back in there. But I would say, take the new teachers have to be priority. And then teachers that are struggling, and then you take on the other stuff that you can.
Yeah. And I mean, it's really hard because you feel like you have to, new teachers, I feel like do take a priority because they are a perfect mix of like a willing teacher and somebody who needs the support, usually, depending on the type of new teacher they are. So the willingness is what you're really looking for. And so when it, comes to the struggling ones, you may not have as much willingness. But with those, you were talking about those ones who are just so great, those runners, and those are the ones that I feel like too. We have to sometimes get in with them to prove to everybody else that coaching isn't just about fixing people, right? So I love that we can partner with them as well. And they do fuel our tank and help us to feel confident in what we're doing because
So
like when you're starting this thing out, you don't know what to do any more than they do. So, okay, good. So, out there in the comments, let us know what has been most useful for you for this conversation tonight. Holly has been sharing some of her resources. So I'm going to pop those up on the screen. We'll look at those real quick while you leave us some comments. And then we will let me see if I can put this up here. You can tell me about, yeah, there it is. Okay. So tell me what these are. So here's our sample schedule.
Yep. And that doesn't have everything on it, but it's where I started.
Yes.
And
Okay.
it's color coded by grade level.
Okay.
And then the sample coaching log is where I would track goals. They're actually not in there, but it just kind of shows you how I set it up.
Yes, perfect.
And then what is that next
Well,
one?
protocol, what looked for with the walkthroughs.
Okay. That's our DIP. So that's the dice are by district, what they use to monitor and kind of track what's going on in the classrooms. And then the quick conference form is our planning sheet that I mentioned, where we kind of look at our goal. We look at one of the weak areas and we write strengths down also so that you have the positives when you meet with them for the feedback.
Mm-hmm.
I don't always do one of those just because of time, but if it's a big one that I know, like I had a teacher who is one of the best teachers I've ever seen, but her scores were still low all the time and I couldn't figure it out. Okay. So I finally went into her, and she's an experienced teacher with 20 some years behind her, but for some reason things weren't working out in ELA. So I finally went in, and I went in that frame of mind of I need to figure out what's happening. And once I went in for that, I found out that her objective wasn't aligning to the standard. So instead of teaching specific standards, she was teaching comprehension as a whole. So her kids were learning how to read better, but they weren't learning how to target the standard when it was asked in a multiple choice question type of.
Yes, that's so tricky, but yes.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy. So I did write one up for her because I didn't want it to seem like I didn't think she was doing a good job. So I really wanted to plan that one out really well. And it did help a lot to have it mapped out ahead of time, because I really think that could have gone sideways if I wasn't careful.
Yeah.
I didn't want her to feel bad about it because she's a really strong teacher. So
yeah. Okay. When you get back to like when we hop off, try to check the permissions, because I tried to open that one and it was saying that.
Okay.
So just with their Google Docs, you have to do that.
Yeah, I thought I did, but I'll check it.
Yeah, just check it for us in case anybody else is noticing that.
Yeah, I'm glad you're checking them.
Okay, then the playbook.
The playbook is the thing I mentioned from Solution Tree. It has those 4 big categories that I let them choose their goals from, and then we kind of map their progress of those goals in the coaching log.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, and then coaching guiding questions. Those are your questions that you have on your clipboard.
Yep, exactly. So I keep those on there laminated so that I can use it as a reference when I need it.
Yeah, I have, I don't know if I have it over here or not, but I don't think I have it. I can pop it up real quick though. I also have a download that coaches can download about the 7 essential questions from Michael Bungay-Staniers' book, The Coaching Habit. So if anybody needs like just a list of questions, clip on their clipboard. You can steal Holly's, you can steal this one. So you definitely have lots of resources in your hands for that. Okay, I think that the comments are not showing up. So I'm looking over here to see if there's anything. Vanessa says she really likes the walkthrough form. Is there a book that went with the playbook? Is there a specific book that goes with that playbook?
No, they just call it a playbook. I was wondering that too.
Okay, so answer that question. And then do you have any advice on how to best coach teachers who are using scripted programs? We have special education teachers, interventionists. They're teachers who are required to work with me, and we've worked on classroom management. Yeah, I actually have a scripted program, but do you have thoughts on that before?
We do. We have scripted programs also. We have to-do lists or like checklists from each subject area that we use. So we use 95% for phonics, for example, and they have to read it step by step by step, exactly word by word. So that's been new for me because I've never used a scripted curriculum before until this time. So I've never taught from one, but I've been being a coach from one. So it's been interesting to me to learn that through coaching eyes instead of teaching eyes. But I just strictly stick to that because it's easier for me to use the black and white data from it without putting my personal opinions into how I hate scripted programs.
Yes, but some of those new teachers, if you
Yeah,
reach them without some script, then they may not know where to start. So it's like this catch-22 for the ones who. Okay, so when you're coaching a teacher, do you coach her on whether or not she executed the script right? Do you coach her on everything else, assuming that she's doing that right? Like, where do you focus with those conversations?
For me, again, it would depend on what goal they wanted to set.
Yeah.
Unless the curriculum people were here for it, because sometimes they come in to see how well it was scripted. So if they were here to view it, then we would look at how it was scripted and we would go directly through that. But if it wasn't, I would still focus on what their goal is, because you can't do all of it at one time.
Yeah. Well, in ours, ours is scripted and it's really helpful and guided for the teacher, but there's elements that I can still coach into even with the script. So one of the things that we've done with the consultants who's helped us, this has been a phenomenal activity, but it's like a lesson study. So we would actually pre-prep the lesson by looking at it ahead of time and estimating about how long each section would take, and just like pre-planning it. And then we would go to the classroom and watch the teacher teach it, trying to execute it as planned, and watch it with real kids and all that. And then we would kind of go back and we would do a little debrief on like what went the way that it should and shouldn't. And I think one of the things that we learned from this process the most was that it should probably pace a lot faster than you're doing it. And so there's different, like, pacing is just one of the things that I can still coach into, even though it's scripted. But there's also things like ours has a independent reading time for about, depending on the different grade levels, like 10 to 20, sometimes even 30 minutes. And teachers continue to say, we've built in a lot of time, but they will say it's just really hard to make that happen, or there's not enough time. And so I'll go in and we'll work on where we can fit that time in to make sure that they're not dropping that piece of the lesson and that they're fitting that in. So those are some different pieces that I've still been able to coach into, even though our curriculum is scripted. And most of the time, because it's scripted, I'm often coaching into the prep. Because they don't have to prep as much, I'm helping them see, like, if you had prepped your book and you'd put your sticky notes on it, then you wouldn't have had to feel like you didn't know what you were going to say in this part or that part. So we will walk through some of those things, like simple things, like how to prep for it so that it doesn't feel like you're, like they have their book in their lap, which we encourage.
Right.
But there is still an element of, if you had prepped your read aloud, you may not have felt like you had to do that.
Right. Because any class is going to fall apart if you're staring at a book. So, and that becomes the challenge for sure. But we've had a challenge overall of lack of planning. Have you seen that also?
Well, I think yes, I have, but I think it's just a combination. It's like it's this idea of it's in the script, so I don't need to look too far ahead, and I can wait till the last minute to figure it out, that kind of thing. But I appreciate that the book is so well done that they really trust it to just pull it out and do it. So it's like this catch-22 for us. But yes, we want them looking ahead. The thing I want all teachers doing is doing more of a big picture view, like a unit type of view, not just a day-to-day. I think that's difficult for my elementary teachers who have so much to manage, to step back and take that view.
Yeah, we see that too. We have a really strong curriculum map that's been done for each grade level, and I think it's too strong sometimes because
they rely on it
going day by day instead of looking at the big picture, like you said. Backwards designing needs to happen more often.
Well, and they don't often they don't have to think with that high level design, backwards design process when it is done for them. And so it's like, we're not working those muscles, but we want them working those muscles. So it's I like to also, with the scripted, to try and address that with the scripted curriculum, is like look ahead at the next unit in a team planning meeting intentionally and like make them stop and read it, and we read it together so that we're not just picking it up and reading as is. And ours has a lot of really good front matter and at the beginning of each unit. Just if we actually took the time, it would be really valuable. So I try and make that time. And
our math is that way too, and it does give you a lot of good stuff ahead of time, but you do have to read it or else you lose a lot. So
right, or you're like, okay, here we go. So,
yep.
Okay, let me see if we have any other questions.
Okay.
But it looks like, do they understand what the standards mean? If not, unpacking those. I think she was replying back to Amy. So thank y'all for being here. For some reason, these comments wouldn't let me show up, put them up on the screen. So I see that some of y'all were over in the New to Coaching group comments. So thank you so much for being here, y'all. Thank you so much, Holly, for coming in and sharing your first year coaching story with us. We can't wait to continue the journey. You have such great resources. Thank you for being willing to share those.
No problem.
If you will, or we can put the Padlet in a post in the Facebook group too.
Okay.
So they can go and see it there, and we will just continue to point people to it when they're asking questions, because I think this idea of weekly meetings is a really great one to come around to help coaches figure out how to actually get to the coaching work, right?
Yeah, that is what got me there for sure.
Yes, good. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here, Holly. And thanks for everybody out there today. And we will see you later.
Bye. See you later.
Okay. Bye.